Hello and welcome to How to Deal When the Shit Gets Real podcast. I'm Rietta.
And I'm Connie, and today we are here with author Kimberly McKay.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kimberly. I have 9 books out. I've got 4 original scripts under contract with a film agent. I have a podcast, A Novel Thought, which is how Rietta and I kind of connected. And basically, I'm a creative at heart. I also am a writing instructor at OU. And I also work full-time in sales and media, plus being a mom, a wife, daughter, friend.
You have a lot on your plate. Wow.
I have a few plates spinning here and there. So, I try not to drop one.
I was just going to say you're a busy lady, but I love it.
I think during the pandemic, it gave me a little more time to manage. So some of this gray that you guys can see, because we're like visual here, I know it won't be on the final product, but some of this gray is starting to multiply a little bit faster than I would like.
That's what happens when you have so many plates up in the air.
Yes. And my husband and I also have a part-time marketing firm on the side that we help clients with on top of that. So yeah, no big deal.
Busy bees.
Ooh, note to self, if I ever need marketing help.
Yes, ma'am.
Our podcast needs marketing help for sure.
Hey, you know that saying, doctor, heal thyself? Like, I help others with marketing, yet I don't have time to do anything for myself. So now I'm
oh my gosh.
Right, I've got to do it for me now.
Oh my God. Well, at least you have the knowledge and like the know-how. So that helps.
To some degree, yeah.
And hopefully we can help you even just a little bit. I mean, if even a couple people hear our podcast and go, hey, I want to read Kimberly's books, that's something.
Yeah. What's weird is that I think I've got a different voice than a lot of people. You can go to one of my latest books, Interlaced Souls, and you'll see someone's review that says, it's like nothing I've read before. And there's another separate review on Goodreads that kind of says the same thing. I've got a different voice. I try not to be, I know there's a lot of tropes out there and there's a lot of people that write to market, and I don't. I may fall into some tropes, but I don't purposely do it, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. And I'm just weird enough that some of that personality kind of gets into my characters and they make them a little more fun, I think, than some of the more two-dimensional characters you might read about.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I love that. And I feel like all of us writers are kind of weird in a different way. We all have little weird quirks.
Yeah.
So since we're talking about your writing, what inspired you to start writing?
So yeah, since the time I could pick up a crayon and put it to paper, I had stories in my head and characters, just like most kids that draw. But then, by the time I'm 2, I'm in front of my parents' typewriters and it's dramatic rise and dramatic fall and a climax in my head, but nobody could read it because I couldn't spell. I'm just typing all the syntax out. And so by the time I was in 4th grade, I wrote my first book for a project. It went to state. My teacher sent us off and was like, this is great. We got to send it in for a project. It won Best Author. And I just always had that storyteller in the back of my brain to where I wake up with dreams and I'm like, that's my next book. And scenes come to me to where it'll be the scene in the middle of something and I have to build a beginning and an end and bridge the two to make it a full story. But little glimpses will just come. And I'm sure the same can be said for you, Rietta. That's who we are. We're storytellers, correct?
Yeah. It's actually funny you just said that. I literally went to bed like 2 nights ago and I'm almost done with another book. And I was thinking, man, what am I going to write after this? And I had a dream that night that I think is going to be a great book. It's like the universe knew, or my subconscious knew. It's like, oh, you need something else? Here you go.
Exactly. It's the simmering stage. That's what I call it.
Who knew you could do great things in your sleep?
And then there's Connie over here who's super bad and had a dream and wrote it down months ago and knew it would be a good story and still hasn't written it because I'm horrible.
You got to get it on, Connie. You got to start writing
I know. Rita bugs me every day about it pretty much.
I do.
So how's the book going? It's not.
It's okay. At least you have someone like Rietta in your corner. Most people will sit there and go, she's just a dreamer. Don't worry about it. It's a pipe dream. Rietta is a doer, a dreamer and a doer.
She definitely is.
A doer, Miss Connie.
She's always trying to turn me into doer. She's trying to get me fit. She's trying to get me to write a book. She's trying to get me to do lots of things.
I think it's because I waited so long to write my first book. Because whenever I told people like my husband's story, they were like, oh my God, that needs to be a book. And, it took me 8 years.
Yeah, okay.
And I'm like,
right.
So I guess I just don't want you to be like me and 8 years later be like, okay, I'm finally going to do this. It's like, do it now.
But would you say that 8 years later, that was finally your time to where it all kind of came together and culminated?
Yeah, no, that's true. That is a good way to think about it. I finally had no excuses.
Yeah, I think Connie will find her time and she will be like, this is it. Just
I
keep
just have to
pushing her.
stop having excuses.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So how did your writing develop then into your podcast, A Novel Thought?
The pandemic, my background, my marketing, I had a marketing and mass communications degree. And so I'd always wanted to be the one interviewing people. And even in sales, you interview people, you find out their story, you uncover their pain, you provide a solution, a marketing solution, a branding solution, whatever you're selling, you're uncovering those needs. So I've always been really good at making people feel comfortable. That's just a gift that I have. And B, just discovering who they are, things that maybe they didn't even know they knew that I would discover and then be like, huh, I never thought about that. And so because of that, I always wanted to do something with interviewing. I just didn't quite know what until the pandemic hit. And I was like, you know what? I've always thought about doing a podcast. Now is the perfect time. And I'm sure everyone else had the same thought because podcasts are now going,
Oh,
they're
yeah.
exploding. But that's the only answer I have is that the pandemic blessed me with the ability to find the creative outlet.
So now when is Rietta going to be on your podcast?
I think it's April, Rita. Isn't it
Yeah.
April 2nd?
Yeah, next week or the week after. It's almost April, isn't it? Is it next week or the
Oh,
week
yeah,
after?
it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's next week. Oh, snap.
Yeah.
It's coming
No.
fast.
Yeah,
I'm
we did
so
it. We did a
excited.
swap, which I love. I love doing that with podcasters, doing a swap because it just like makes everybody feel so like whole because you get to experience somebody else's podcast and you get to have them on yours. And it's just, I think it's fun.
I think it's fun. And this gives me a chance to kind of get to know you as well, because now I'm formulating questions in the back of my mind, like, ooh, what's her husband's story? So it's good. Of you as well.
We're so glad you're here. And I always love talking with other creative minds because you get to know that you're not so crazy. Because sometimes I feel like I do things that I'm like, this is kind of crazy. And then you talk to other people that have creative minds and they're like, no, I do the same thing.
It's totally normal. Yeah. That's awesome. I can't
So
wait to read your book too.
I was going through your books last night and I'm like, I'm just going to have to ask her because I didn't know where to start because they all sound so interesting. I was like, I need to ask her like which one to start with.
I would start with start with the spiritual gift series, the most recent 4. Even though it's a series, you can pick any of them. They're all standalone. When you're a freshman in high school and you graduate and you start progressing and then you're a sophomore and you've learned more and junior. And by the time you're a senior, you're like, I don't even want to look at the papers I did as a freshman. It's kind of like that with my books. It's not that my first ones aren't good and that they haven't found a home in the heart of readers. They just aren't my best work. And I just would start with the spiritual gift series. I plan on going back and refining those. I just haven't had the time yet.
No, I totally get what you're saying because I feel the same way, even though like my first book is really close to my heart. Like I'm still, even though I'm only 3 books in compared to yours, I can still, I totally get what you're saying. You feel the progression in yourself as the more and more you do it, like anything.
And the more you read too, I encourage every writer to read and I used to be, I shake my head at myself and I actually want to smack myself on the back of the head like Gibbs does to most people on NCIS.
Oh, yes. Love that series.
But I want to smack myself because I used to be like, yeah, I can't read anything I'm writing. No, and not just no, but hell no. I'm going to say that quietly because I try not to swear, and this is a perfect podcast if I'm going to do it. But
Yeah,
you
we swear,
learn
sorry.
so much about what not to do and how not to progress in a storyline by reading authors that haven't perfected it, and you learn so much about, wow, they really have their stuff together, and this is like they fleshed their characters out. It's 3-dimensional. They connected the dots in such an infinite but tiny way, but then they have this bigger storyline. You learn so much that, yeah, I mean, when I finally got over myself and started reading more, it just opened up a whole new world for me.
And since you're talking about that, and I know it's hard because it's hard for me, like if you could pick a couple favorite books, what are some of your favorite books?
I've been thinking about this. I have one that's more commercial and then I have some that are indie. Do you mind if I mention them all?
Oh, sure.
Okay.
Absolutely. I'd love it because I'm going to write, I got my pencil.
Yeah. So Harlan Coben, Tell No One. That's like one of my favorites. Anything by Edgar Allan Poe, the way he uses imagery, the way he just can craft a story to where you're there. Oh, it's heart stopping. I mean, he was who put an impression on me as a writer in the 4th grade, just how to create a theater of the mind. But most recently, like I've been really studying indie authors just because I have a heart for indie authors. It used to be 10 or 15 years ago, that stereotype was, oh, if you can't get published traditionally, you're not good because those that can't teach and those that really shouldn't are going to do it themselves. That's not the truth. The truth is a lot of us have smartened up and recognized that, we can do it on our own and we can do it well. And so I have some indies that I wanted to share with you guys. So The Interview by Donna Lane, she crafts a lot of her things after what C.S. Lewis has done. So she does a lot of allegory and, visuals, and it's a really good story. Where They All Belong by Chloe Flanagan. That's just kind of a story I wouldn't have picked up because I didn't really like the cover. It's not that I didn't like the cover. The cover's nice, but the cover has a set of it's an older couple on it. And, I want the beefcake on the cover, or I want the lady on the cover, but she's also somebody that I know. And I'm like, well, the cover is okay. It's pretty, but it's not something I would have normally gravitated toward, but I'm going to read it. And she's one of those that just does a really good job of crafting her characters and telling a story and unfolding twists and turns that you didn't expect. And it's just really heartfelt writing. Jill Cox, anything by Jill Cox. She's quirky and funny. The Bridge by Jill Cox is really good. And then my favorite YA series is the Phantom Island series by Chrissy Dallas. Like, she is probably my new favorite author. And I just have discovered a love for YA through her eyes. She takes what would be like the show Lost and makes it about combine Lost and then teens on an island and what would happen. And it's
Sounds
like
interesting.
this poodle they have to go through.
Lord of the Flies.
Yeah, I mean, there's a little bit of magic and realism and fantasy all mixed in. It's really cool.
That sounds really interesting. Actually, you had me at Lost, so I was like, okay.
Yep, all of those are some of my favorites for different reasons.
And I haven't read. This is why I love talking to others, because there's so many books out there and I haven't read any of them. So now I have 1, 2, 3, at least 5 more that I haven't read. So that's amazing.
Amazon, when you're going and getting like a book from Amazon, they only suggest like very similar things, and maybe an author once removed. You're not getting a lot from their suggestions.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. And sometimes, depending on the heat level, when it comes to contemporary romance, or, I'm mostly romantic suspense. I'm mostly like family saga, romantic suspense, a little bit of mystery, and multi-genre. But when it comes to just straight up contemporary romance, sometimes it's just smut. And I don't, I think a lot of authors fall back on smut because they don't know how to write a really good storyline. And I hate to say that because I know there are some authors that can write a really good storyline, but I think sometimes smut takes it away. It takes your focus away, what could really be something developing between two people that can make you think versus, physically react. Does that make sense at all?
Oh, yes. Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah. There are occasions where I'm like, no, I don't want to think. And I'll just go and grab smut because I don't want to think. I just want to read a little smut and be done.
I get that. And I have been there before too. Yep. I get that. There's nothing. There's
a need for both. There's a need for all books.
I just, the point, and I'm a little older than you. So maybe, when I was in my 30s, I would have been like, that's fine. But now that I'm in my 40s, I'm like, I want a little more emotional and intellectual stimulation.
Yeah. Nope. Totally get that. Yeah. I remember the first time I read Olive Kitty Ridge, I was like, this book, oh my God, my heart, which is a big, I think everybody at this point has read that book, but it was so good.
I haven't. So you're going to have to message me that one.
Oh, it's so good. I think it won the Pulitzer a couple years ago, if I remember correctly. It's so good.
That might have been in the phase when I wasn't reading. No, just kidding.
It could have been.
There's no such phase, okay?
I know. And that was a long time ago. I was way young and way stupid. I can admit that.
So what's one thing you wish you knew when you started on your path to becoming like an author?
Oh, man.
And I was just doing this like a path.
Yeah, thanks so much. I was traditionally published with my first book. Mm-hmm. And it was with a legitimate publisher, but not a very ethical one. And so she stole every cent from every author that she had. And
oh my goodness.
I had to cease and desist and have her take the work down so I could re-release. And at that point, that's when I became indie, because I knew I was never going to share royalties with anyone again. And I didn't have the networking like I have now. I didn't have, it was a long time before like Facebook even really started kicking in with all these groups. And I didn't have the knowledge base that I have now to know about beta readers or where to find a good editor or how to get, I have a graphic design background, but I was like, I don't know if I want to design my own book. I haven't done it before. I don't know about the spine and the back and the sizes. I had to do a lot of research. So if I could say one thing, I would say beta readers would have helped me out from day one if I had known about how to assemble a really good team and not surrounding yourself around with people that are like, oh, Kim, good job, and patting you on the back.
Yeah, but who are going to give real
yeah, you want
feedback.
Exactly. So I often tell new writers, go find people that are analytical, that don't read, that are like lawyers or financial people that have that black and white brain that's opposite of the creative brain, and convince them to read it, because they will find every error and everything that doesn't make sense, and they will tell you everything they don't like. And that's the person you want. You also want some of those other people, but you need a balance of both so that you can find out what isn't working. And
so that's why I always had my mom read my papers, because she's an accountant.
Exactly.
I knew she would just read the words and like the sentence structure and grammar, and that's all I wanted.
Well, and I teach a writing class at OU. So my son's like, Mom, can you look at this paper? And I'm like, yeah, but I'm not writing. He never asked me to write it, but I'm always like looking it over for him. And although I'm creative, I'll nail him every time on something because it'll make him better.
Yep.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. You got to have that person. I actually have a really good friend who is one of my beta readers, and I did regret not using beta readers the first time. So I think that's great advice. And she's dyslexic, so she reads slower. So she's actually my person that catches everything because she's paying attention to it more, because it takes her longer to process. It's actually an advantage because she'll be like, you have from instead of for, or like even little things that the editor will miss. And I'm like, I love you.
Yeah, that's good that you have her. Editors, I mean, I've had good editors before, and I'll still get nailed on Amazon going, well, she needs an editor. I'm like, I had a great editor, but you only have, 10 people looking at it. Something's still going to fall between the cracks.
Yeah. Yeah. They still only have, you can have an amazing editor. He or she still only has 2 eyes. They're only going to catch so much.
Yep.
And I'm definitely not like, I've caught, errors like that before, but I never make like a post on it. Like I only ever want to just be like, FYI writer, you did miss this. But like, I never want to be like, oh, you need an editor, because I for sure know that, yeah,
can you
editing a 300 page book, it's for sure something is going to fall through the cracks.
Then you need to be leaving me those reviews then, because I've had so many nasty people. I had one lady
I would never
tell me that I had the characters hugging too much, and she gave me a 1-star review because they hugged.
Oh my goodness.
Hey, somebody was stalking Rietta, and they gave us a 1-star review on the podcast just because he wanted to be a jerk.
Oh my gosh.
There's always the creeps out there,
Yeah, but it's all good. I wanted to ask her if she needed a hug after that.
Yeah.
You should
I
have.
did respond to her though in a kind way, and I told her thank you. I'm like, thank you so much for your response. It means a lot to me. And she was like, why would you respond to me because it's negative? Because you cared enough to leave a response. So thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, now that I think about it, I mean, when they did hug, it was really appropriate when they were hugging, and I'm like, yeah, you think?
Yeah, I mean,
okay, but how's a hug inappropriate unless you're naked? That's like the only kind of hug that I could think of that would be inappropriate.
I don't know.
I miss hugging. I mean, because we're not hugging as much as we normally do, and I could always take an extra hug.
And she misses our family because our family total huggers. You're getting a hug a million times.
Now, are you guys in the same state, or where are you guys? I know you're in Hawaii, Rietta.
And then I'm in Chicago.
Okay, you sounded like you were north somewhere, but I didn't know.
Oh, yeah. Well, north, kind of, yeah.
Kind of. I've got family in Peoria.
Oh,
okay. Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's like 3 hours ish where we're both from. I mean, I'm originally from there, just not there right now.
How did you end up in Hawaii?
My husband's a Marine, so we are stationed here. Yeah.
My dad was 30 years in the Corps. Tell him thank you for his service.
Oh, I'll have to tell him. He'll love that. Yeah, and same to your dad. I mean, that's incredible.
So you guys are at K-Bay?
Yes.
Oh, that's where I grew up.
Do you miss it? I was just gonna say.
Yeah. Kailua, Kaneohe, Honolulu, all three. We've lived in different areas throughout the years. And if it wasn't there, it was in Okinawa. So I've been around that culture 90% of my young adult life and adolescent life. It's only been since 1990 that I lived in Oklahoma. So I'm an Okie from Okie when you think about an Okie from Okinawa.
Oh yeah.
That's kind of funny.
Yeah, I like that. Do you think you'll ever come back to Oahu?
Yeah, we actually come back from time to time. I still have my ohana there, and all my aunties and uncles. We were the first haoles at a Nazarene church on Mokulele Drive. School, that's where I went as well. And so I still have all my aunties and uncles and cousins, and they treated us like we were their family. And I haven't been back in 10 years though, so it's time to go back.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's time to come back. Wait until it stops all this raining business though. Give it another month or so.
How are you doing in that? I heard there was some severe like flooding.
We're okay here on the military base, but Haleiwa got evacuated because the flooding was really bad on the North Shore. So what is one of the most difficult things you've had to overcome, and how did you do so? Connie, I know that's your question, but I had to throw it out there.
I don't care.
It's all good. There's plenty to choose from, but I think the most detrimental one that was the turning point in my life, we're talking about stuff getting real, right? Date raped at the age of 15 was my first kiss. Thought I was pregnant. Thank the good Lord I wasn't. I didn't truly start going through counseling until I was in my 20s. I went to college and roomed with this person's sister because it didn't happen. It didn't happen. It was like picking at a scab, it just oozing wound, and it didn't happen. It didn't happen. It didn't happen. This person was on college campus and harassing me every day, calling me when he knew his sister wouldn't be there. Hey, I had dreams about you last night. I would just hang up. So finally, my sophomore year, I met him on campus. I had him, hey, you're going to meet me here on campus. And I stood up to him and I said, no more. You're not to look in my direction, talk to me, think about me, even speak my name, or I'll have every big, fat, hairy ass guy, dude, that I know come beat you up. Like, you're done. And he said, if it makes you feel better, you're the only one that wasn't drunk. So you're really the only one I feel bad about. So,
wow.
I think I'm like 19 at that point. And I'm thinking, if I had put a stop to that when I was 15, because I was 15 years old when it happened, I could have done something so that girls after me didn't have to suffer the same fate. But we had moved to Okinawa the very next day when that happened to me. But legally, there was nothing that could be done. I was still in shock. So how I overcame that is just through multiple counseling sessions and getting back to the core of who I am and loving me and knowing that I'm okay. And God has used that in such great ways, because my first book, Finding Kylie, is based on that story. I'd always wondered what would happen if I were pregnant? What would that child's life be like? And what would my life been like?
Mm-hmm.
So Finding Kylie is a dual storyline of a mother and daughter who have basically, the daughter becomes the survivor the mother never could. And so both women are me. Kylie is the mother if I had not gone through counseling, and Chastity is the daughter, the strong, independent female who is who I was after counseling. And that turned into an accidental series because I had closure at the end of the book, but there's this letter from a father that Chastity receives. And I kept getting letters from readers. What's in John's letter? What's in John's letter? I couldn't answer that. I couldn't answer that because that meant I had to tell his side of the story, which meant I had to forgive my attacker. And I couldn't do that. And so one night I'm praying, I'm like, God, I can't forgive. I can't let go. And I'm like, how do I do this? I know I have too many letters coming in. I know I have to write this story from a father's perspective. I can't do this on my own. And so I go to bed, and those Cadbury bunnies that you see, the milk chocolate. Well, I see him and his sister, because his sister was equally as mentally abusive to me, because she didn't understand his attention toward me. So anything I did, she had to do and do better. Anyone I dated and dumped, she had to date them, and they liked her better. So both of them were tormenting me for a period of 2 or 3 years in college. And that night I dreamt, and they were these Cadbury figures, white chocolate, and body parts just started melting off, their ears, their nose, their arm. And pretty soon it was just a puddle of white chocolate in the floor. And I woke up and I was completely at peace. And when I thought about both of them, I didn't have anger anymore. I didn't have bitterness. I didn't have rage. I didn't feel like a victim anymore. I didn't feel dirty. I didn't feel, even as much as counseling as I'd gone through, you still have triggers. And me praying, God, I can't do it by myself. I wake up and he did it for me. And so at that point, I was able to sit down and write Facing Redemption, which is an unwanted father's, relationship with a daughter. And And he tried to bridging the gap with chastity through these letters. And the premise is even the worst of us with a changed heart has a chance to face redemption. And so that is how I overcame, because essentially writing is very cathartic, and it gave me a chance to step outside of myself and heal thyself while also helping others. I can't tell you how many people have written to me. I've given testimony at my church, and there was a 70-year-old lady who came up after church and was crying in my arms. And she said, if you can get in front of an entire congregation and tell your story, I can go home today and tell my family that happened to me 65 years ago. I will never forget it. It still gives me chills that what I went through has a purpose, and it's for his plan that I can help others.
That's all very powerful. Like, I have goosebumps.
Yeah. Me too.
Good. This is true.
So did you, with what happened to you, did you start like reaching out and like trying to help other women get through what you went through, or donating or charity work or anything like that, so that people know that they're not alone?
I actually just am very open with my story with everyone I meet. And I can't tell you how many, I mean, when you see stats are 1 out of 3 women and 1 out of 5 adults. I mean, the stats are going to be higher than that. Because when I think about myself, if you're saying 1 out of 3 women, that's reported. I never reported it. So, I mean, just us 3 sitting in here, that's me if I reported it out of us 3. Stats are probably going to be higher than that. I'm not saying you guys need to share a story if that happened to you. I'm not asking you to, if you want to be transparent, that's fine. But I'm just very open with who I am. And women just find me. I mean, and that's kind of where I'm open as a tool to be used with everybody I'm in contact with. So no, I haven't specifically reached out to like a shelter or anything like that, but I have gone to underprivileged schools and visited with girls and shared my story there. I just haven't been a part of an organization on a whole as a consistent basis. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, no, for sure. I was just curious because a lot, like you hear a lot of people who've gone through something traumatic like that, they then start to like, no, I don't want anybody else to go through what I went through. And really it's us as society that's the problem, because we shame the girls into not coming forward saying that it's their fault, and it's not.
And it's not.
No,
Yeah,
it's
she
definitely
knew
not.
this, she was asking for it, or she was drinking.
Yeah.
Like he said, you're the only one that wasn't drinking. Well, that's not an excuse.
No, it's not an excuse. And 15
that
is such
still
a
means
tender
that
age.
Oh yeah. And it still means everybody else was date raped. Just because they had a drink doesn't mean you didn't take advantage of them.
Mm-hmm.
Right. That doesn't change anything about the story at all.
Mm-hmm.
So there's your answer. I don't know if you're ready for that or not, but that's it. That's
I love it. I love how real it was. It did give me goosebumps too.
I got tons of real stuff. You just have to keep asking.
Well, now I feel like I need more real questions.
I'm an open book, Miss Connie. You can ask anything. I've often been compared to a fire hydrant.
I feel that because most of the time I don't stop talking. So did you have your faith before the date rape happened, or did you get date raped and then you found faith?
I've had it since I was young. I mean, my parents are very strong Christians. We come from a legacy of generations back. I can look through ancestry and see pastor after pastor after pastor at different points in time to where, I'm very grateful that I've had strong examples in my life. My mom is extremely strong. I remember giving my heart to the Lord when I was 3 and just bowing down and saying, okay, I know what this means. I was baptized at 5 in the ocean there.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Triangle Beach Park.
If I was going to be baptized
I love
again,
it there.
That's where I would want to be baptized.
Yeah. And so we all stray. Don't get me wrong. There were times in my life when I wasn't what I should be, but I think, and if you read the Bible or if you're familiar with this, but he takes things and makes them for his good. So anything I've gone through or any decisions I've made, now I can be real with people and go, you know what, I've done that too. And you're going to be okay. It's going to be good.
Yeah. Cause he's not supposed to be a spiteful, mean person. He's forgiving and loving, and sometimes people misconstrue that.
Yes, and I think other Christians can dirty the waters when it comes to not walking the walk, but definitely talking the talk. In one of my books, Coming Home, and I hate referring to all my books, but there's a
Oh no,
scene.
that's good.
Is it good? Well, there's a scene
Yeah.
between two girls, and there's one girl of faith, and I don't push an agenda with my books. There's only one book that talks about faith, and it's kind of right there in your face, and that's Facing Redemption, but it's for a reason, because he was so bad and he was converted, right? But a spin-off book right after that is called Coming Home, and there's a girl that's just kind of asking another girl, like, you keep touching the cross on your necklace, you seem to read your Bible, what's up with that? And she was like, they're on a reality TV show, and she didn't really want to say anything, because anything you say on TV can be misconstrued and tweaked and turned and twisted. And so she said, okay, before the cameras get here, let me just say this: Christianity or Christians or the church is much like a gym. There are those at the gym that are there, they're muscle heads, they're working out, and they're just there to look at themselves. Same thing with the church. There are those that are there just for a meat market to pick up on the girls. Same thing at the church. There are those that are there that just want to be there to be seen because they're doing something good in their life, but they're not really working that hard at it. Same thing with the church. And then there are those that are there that are really working quietly in the corner to make themselves better, and they're there to help other people. And, same thing with the church. Don't let people ruin your relationship with God. Do what you need to do for yourself, because it's a relationship. It's not about religion.
So my mom and I have been criticized for not always going to church, even though we're believers. And it's actually from a family member who was big into church and going 3 times a week and stuff like that. And my mom would always say, no, because I practice in my house. Even if I don't go every Sunday, I practice what I believe, and that's what's important. Are you in the same opinion? Like, are you supposed to always go to church, or can you just believe in your heart and practice what you preach?
I think it's both. I think God calls you according to how you're supposed to be a believer, and only He can convict you to live your life one way or the other. And so there are some people that are like, going to be there Sunday when the doors are open before the pastor gets there, and that's how I get my church on, and that's fine for them. But if it doesn't work for you and your mom, that's fine too. I will say that fellowship is important, just like those Facebook meeting groups, like learning about writing and networking. That's why fellowship in the church is so important, because then when you are struggling, there's someone there to go, hey, I got you, if you're talking to the right people at the church, right? Not the meatheads doing the muscles in the mirror. But I think
because I feel like is the guy doing the muscles in the mirror, trying to make his,
God is with us wherever we go. His Holy Spirit is in us. We worship Him at home. When we're walking down the street, I talk to Him in the car. I miss going to church though, since the pandemic. I will say that I cannot wait to get back, because I miss seeing my friends, and I miss seeing, there's something about sitting in the sanctuary where the message is live compared to sitting at home and watching online. There's a huge difference for me. But I mean, everybody has to do what they need to do for themselves.
Yeah, our grandma totally misses it. She's huge in the church. She goes, they have all like the prayer meetings and everything. So she's like, when are we coming back? Get me into the church. Gosh darn it. I want to see my friends.
Yeah,
because you can tell your friend that keeps like saying, or your family member that says you need to be in church, tell them to get the plank out of your own eye before you pick out the splinter and somebody else's, or no, the vice versa, however that goes. Tell him to focus on himself and not focus on you so much.
Use Grandpa's quote, focus on the donut and not on the hole.
On the hole. That was a good one.
That's good.
Our grandpa used to say that all the time.
I love it.
Keep your eye upon the donut, not upon the hole.
You guys need to put that in a book.
And he had some funny ones, some funny one-liners.
He does, yeah. He did, because Grandma always wanted him to pick up the snow, and he would say, God put it down, let God take it away.
Oh, I love it. Did she say, okay, I would have to come back. My husband is really good about coming like quippy comebacks, but my dad slipped in the ice and fell recently. And so, oh my gosh, you guys, my dad's a Marine. You know how they are. 70-something years old.
I was just going to ask, how old is he now?
He's 70. How old am I? Okay, he's 79. Mm-hmm. And, they teach him to tuck and roll. Uncle Sam taught me to tuck and roll. I'm like, how'd that tuck and roll go? Because the back of your crown needed 13 inches or 13 stitches or staples. So that tuck and roll, like,
it wasn't helping you.
It wasn't helping you.
Oh my God. I'm going to ask my husband about that later. I'm going to be like, do you know about the tuck and roll? He's probably going to be like, what?
Yeah. When you fall, you tuck and roll to protect yourself.
Oh, I
I
love that.
remember stop, drop, and roll from being a fireman's daughter, but that's about it.
Well, that's if you're on fire, not if you're falling. But same concept.
Well, and that whole point was, if God put it down, he can pick it up. I'm like, well, if you do get out there, you're going to bust your butt. So yeah, I mean, let God melt it off so that you don't bust your butt on what you shouldn't be on.
I know we have to keep on telling my grandma to stop going out on a 1 mile walk when it snows. We're like, Grandma, you keep falling. You need to stop. Only go out and walk when it's nice.
Yeah, she's 91. So
yeah.
She's amazing.
Adorable.
But yeah, we're like, can you at least take your cane? Because she'll go without her cane.
Now, have you guys written down her story?
We should.
I bet she has lots of gems of wisdom and a lot.
I mean, she had 7 kids, so God bless her.
So my question was, because I always wonder this as a creative mind myself, like I tend to work, or whatever you want to call it, work or write or in the evenings, because I feel like my brain is more active or more thinking of at night. So do you feel that way too? Do you work at night? Do you have a place that you like, or do you just do whatever?
I have my couch in there because my husband has his man cave, and I sit there and put a little music on sometimes. Sometimes I don't, depends on the scene. And I write just whenever I'm inspired. I try not to schedule. I know this is so backwards. Some writers are like, oh, I schedule this time to this time, so I have an actual slot. No, I don't schedule anything for any time. It's just when I'm inspired, I write it down, and then the story just kind of starts writing itself that way.
Yeah, I don't schedule time either. It just tends to happen at night. I don't know if my brain is just like, yeah, okay, let's go.
Or you're so busy in the morning and during the days with everything that you do, Rietta, that it's just like your one calm time is at night.
I always ask that question when I meet other creative people, because I remember at one point, I think it was actually like Justin Bieber who was talking about it. He's like, I'll be in the studio at 2:00 in the morning because I'll get an idea and I just go. I'm like, oh, okay, it's not just me. So now it inspired me to start asking people like, hey, do you do this too? Do you write at night, or do you go to different places? Like, do you change up where you write, or is it always your couch?
I mean, I could change it up. It's just with the pandemic, it's just been my couch lately. But I mean, a lot of times it'll be at night while I'm in bed and I'm not writing. I'm in that simmering stage where I'm creating characters, and 2 to 3 a.m. is usually when I'm percolating. And I'm asleep enough to know I'm sleeping, but awake enough to know that I've got stories that I'm crafting. Does that make sense?
That totally happened to me the other night. Yes.
Absolutely makes sense.
And then I was super mad because I had like some great thoughts for the book, didn't write it down. And I was like, son of a gun, who forgot everything. Me, who should have just gotten up and gotten a piece of paper or gotten my phone and written it down. This person who totally didn't, also me. Because I was like, no, I will sleep. I will stop these creative thoughts. And
you got to write it down.
It was bad.
You got to have a notepad by your bed.
Yep, that's what I do. I have a notepad. I have a notepad and my phone. Yep, I have both. Depending on like if I want to look at the bright screen or not. You should see the notes section in my phone. It's ridiculous. Some of it doesn't make sense because you are half asleep, and sometimes I'll wake up in the morning and I'm like, it's like that Seinfeld episode when he's trying for the whole episode to figure out what he wrote down. And he's like, I don't know what that says. Yep, see, she's got a bunch of notes too. So just keep your phone and a notebook, and then you have 2 options and no excuses.
Well, see, this is what happened. I was like, I need to go to bed. It's been like, I'm like, it's midnight. I need to go to bed. Like, why won't you just shut off, brain? I was like, no, stop thinking, and like, but random thoughts would keep popping in my head, but I was just being so resistant to it. I was like, no, you need to sleep. And then Connie didn't write anything down and didn't think, just because you're not sleeping doesn't mean these thoughts aren't good.
Yeah, you got to write them down. There's been so many times too. I mean, I wouldn't have had my second and my third book if I didn't write down my dream.
See, Connie, do that. Do it.
Okay.
We're turning you into a doer, remember?
It's probably just because I hate my own writing. So it's fine. I'll figure it out.
So when you do read, do you also read spiritual books like about any type of spirituality, or are you only reading Christian? No, not at all.
No, I just save that for the Bible, and
Okay.
and then I just do fiction of all types. It could be whatever, as long as it's not too much smut, like we've gone over before.
Mhm.
A little bit here and there is not that big of a deal. But no, I mean, I'm not a snob when it comes to, for the most part, to any type of genre. I just like good writing. If it captures me within the first, I'm going to give people the first 3 chapters. I want it to hook me in the first chapter, but I'll give them the first 3 chapters to hook me. And because I know I've probably gone 3 to 5 chapters before hooking someone before in some of my previous books. I know I have. So I try to be generous with different readers at different writers at different levels. But I like all types of writing as long as it makes me think and makes me feel.
Yeah, definitely the makes you feel like I love getting all the emotions and like feeling like you're living it. Like that's the best.
Leave a book and still those characters linger, then you know that that person's done their job. And you're like, oh, what's interesting. Okay, you guys want to hear something really weird and eerie?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Always.
So I wrote the spiritual gift series. It's my last 4 because of some things that have happened in my life, like when my grandparents died. My grandfather died, and the casket's going in the ground, and I'm sad. And I hear, "Why are you crying? I'm not in there." Like, I'm not in there is what I heard in the back of my head.
Oh my
And I
gosh.
turned around
That's
and I'm like,
awesome.
"Ooh," and I just got chills in the back of my neck, right? And then when my grandmother died, there's this wind that kind of swept around the casket and the family. And it just felt like she was swirling around saying goodbye. And all of the family members thought the same thing, but we didn't know it until we talked later. We all felt her spirit. My other set of grandparents, when my son was born, the room filled with fog, and I saw them standing over his bassinet. And as a
Aw.
Christian, I mean, I know that we go to heaven or hell. That's the belief that I follow. But I also know God's timing is very different than earthly timing. And so, what does that look like? I mean, I don't believe that you can pray someone into heaven, but I think the Catholics call it purgatory. I do believe that one day here, maybe, or one day there might be 100 years here. I mean, God's timing is very, very different. And so, there have been too many ghost sightings and too many spiritual things happening to not take note of. They might still be lingering around a little bit. Even the Bible talks about the cloud of witnesses, because there's still people here that maybe are waiting for the rapture or waiting for whatever that looks like. I'm not God. I'm not Jesus. I don't know how that works. I just try to read the best I can. So I started this concept with the spiritual gift series because of my grandmother, who has visited me multiple times. And I went to my pastor and I'm like, look, I'm going to write this story starting with the grandmother who dies, but comes back in her death to help this family beyond the grave, to help solve the mystery of her death. And I don't want it to become New Age, because I'm not New Age. I believe in biblical principles. So I need to confer with my pastor to make sure this is okay. And he was like, all right, you're fine. I mean, when Jesus was hanging on the cross, he told the thief, you'll see my face in heaven the next day. But Jesus still hung there for a little bit. Do you think Jesus is a liar? And I'm like, no, I think you're fine to go write your story, Kim. So the spiritual gift series has kind of evolved into these 4 books of the spiritual concept of just so much that it's tapping into that thin realm between heaven and earth, or just the gifts that God gives us. And so this next book that I'm releasing, that is actually out at the end of the month, is about an empath who feels people so deeply that it affects her physically.
I need to
And
read that. I'm an empath, so that I'm gonna need to read that.
you will love it. It's called Interlaced Souls, and she meets her soulmate. And it is on a whole different level. And so that's what I think people mean by, I don't think I've read anything like this before, because I think I try to put things out there that are a little different, but maybe not. Maybe there's stuff out there that I just haven't found yet that reads like mine. But okay, I'm babbling. I just get excited because of
No, I love it.
You're allowed to be excited about what you write.
No,
Well,
and
it's
I think
just
that sounds amazing. It is. It's a very
Yeah.
unique idea, and I'm very interested. So you said it comes out at the end of the month?
yeah. The paperback is available now, so the people that were
Oh, okay.
my ARC readers can go and leave reviews. I kind of always release the paperback first as kind of a backdoor option so people can go leave reviews. But the pre-order for Kindle it'll be open as of March 31st.
I don't know if you remember, Connie, because you were quite a bit younger, but when our Aunt Barbara died, I remember going out to the cemetery and it just started pouring. And it was, this is God calling her home. It gives me chills just thinking about it.
Yeah. And then when our grandpa died, the night before he died or right after he died, he came to me in my dreams twice.
I love that.
and told me that everything was going to be okay.
Mm.
He also told Tom that to take care of me and Grandma.
I love that.
He would do that. He would totally do that.
Yeah, and then he came to me on my wedding night as well.
I love that.
So I was like, oh, I totally get that.
That's cool, Connie.
I love hearing other people having similar stories. It backs up your theory of like what you're thinking and you don't feel as crazy.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Because at first I did think I was crazy. When I found out that he actually did pass that night, I was like, holy crap. That was real. Especially when you wake up with so much emotion that it's like overwhelming. It's like, no, there's no other, that's not just a dream. If you wake up and you feel like he's literally right there, that's not a dream.
I was with my grandfather when he died. He died in my arms. And I'm going to share something that's a little out there. But you said, just like you said, Rieta and Connie, like it's nice hearing stories. He was in a coma by the time I got there, and he'd been calling for me. I was spring break, and it was actually 2 days ago that it was his anniversary of his death. And by the time I got there, he was in a coma. I was wetting a rag, putting it on his lips, and just kind of talking to him. And the only physical reaction, is that he literally just barely turned his head when I was talking to him. So like I knew he heard me, and I knew he knew I was there, but he couldn't respond. And the heart just kept starting dropping. So, everyone had been around him, surrounding him, and he was just waiting for me basically to die. And so I'm calling the nurse, and she's like, "That's okay, honey, it fluctuates." I'm like, "No, it's dropping." And so she left because she just assumed it was fluctuating. And I'll never forget, he popped up and his neck popped up, and his brown eyes went completely black because his irises basically opened up to the point to where, like a camera with an aperture, there was no color, it was just black. And his face had this look of rapture, like he saw angels coming for him. And then he dropped he dropped back. And it was I knew he saw angels, and I knew he saw the Lord, and it was really kind of cool. And so he constantly comes to visit me, just like Miss Connie that you have. It's just nice that you felt him next to you, because it wasn't a dream. That's your heart telling you he was there.
It was crazy.
Awesome.
Oof, I got goosebumps and chills all over again.
Yeah, we actually did an episode about like this kind of thing, like spirituality basically. And like I told Rieta this, so she's like, "What? I didn't know that happened." I'm like, yeah.
She didn't even tell me it happened. And I was like, "Why didn't you tell me?"
Well, I didn't tell anybody until I told you, Rieta. I'm pretty sure the only other person that knew was my husband, Tom.
He was the only. Your mom?
No. I didn't tell anybody.
Surprised you didn't tell your mom.
Well, I might have. It's been a while, but
people think you're weird when you say stuff like that. So I can see where, you might keep it to
No,
yourself.
I think my mom would definitely understand. I think I just felt, no, this was the only reason why Tom knew is because he saw me wake up crying. Because it was a thing for me. It wasn't a thing for anybody else. So what would you say to somebody who isn't a big believer in God?
I think that depends on the person. There are such varying personalities out there, people that have chips on their shoulders, and that, the Bible says don't speak to those that have deaf ears. You're basically wasting your breath. I don't technically tell anybody anything. I am just a friend to everybody. My God teaches me to love everyone. So if conversations arise, and I like to know about what their beliefs are, and I put into them because I want to invest in them and learn about them. And in turn, if they're receptive and they ask me about me, I respond in kind. And it's about building relationships. It's not necessarily about telling an unbeliever what they're doing is, right or wrong, or I'm just not that kind of person.
We have a common friend, me and Rieta, who is like that. Like she posted some crazy things about like making people hear God. And I was like, whoa there. Like it wasn't that, it was even more strongly worded than that. Like I don't remember, but I remember seeing it and saying, whoa there.
Yeah.
I think it takes all kinds in this world. And if she is the kind of person that can make someone hear something that maybe someone else wouldn't, more power to her. That's just not how I operate. It's just, there was a guy in a bar in Vail most recently, it was about a year ago, And he literally asked me, so do you believe that God is the Son, God is the Son and Jesus is his name? And, or do you believe that God could be anyone? And I'm like, no, and I told him, I'm like, I think that Jesus Christ is my savior and he's the Son of God. And he started going off on me. How could you believe that? God is everywhere and God is here and God is here. And it's all these, they're just thinking me all different names. I'm like, dude, you asked me, so slow your roll. Do you want me to answer you or do you want me to answer you the way you would want it? I'm like, because you asked me a question. So if you're not ready for the answer, that's fine, but that's my answer. And I'm telling you, the God I serve would love and we were in a bar, would love everybody in this bar and ask him to sit at his table because he doesn't judge you for you not believing in him. He would love you anyways. And guess what? I'm going to love you anyways. And you can tell me all about what you want to believe and I will listen with grace and I will show you compassion, but you should do the same for me. And then it shut him up.
Exactly.
Well, I mean, people could do that more with conversations anyway. There's so much like argument and disagreement. You could do a little like on both sides. Everybody can listen a little bit more and like not like what that guy did and just jump to conclusions and jump on you and say why this and that is right. It happens way too much.
It does. I was actually just reading last night. I'm reading The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. I don't know if you've ever read that. And he talks about listening with your whole body, like listening with your being, which I was like, ooh,
that's cool.
Not enough people do that. So it's kind of funny you guys are talking about that.
This is the last thing I'll say. I know we've got to wrap this up, but I preach on a little soapbox in my class. And I wouldn't say use the word preach because I don't talk about faith or religion in our class, but I do preach on this topic of agree to disagree. Because I'm teaching journalists who are going to go out in the world. And I'm like, no unconscious bias, no slant to your opinions, meet in the middle. And accuracy is important and report on the facts, but always agree to disagree because you're going to run across people that don't believe the same as you. And that's okay. Be an adult, learn to listen and understand and know that that's going to make you a better journalist.
Absolutely.
And that's a wonderful ending. This is how to deal when shit gets real. Come and follow us on Instagram, on YouTube. Send us an email if you want to be interviewed by us. And if you have any comments, questions, concerns, you can email us.
And thank you, Kimberly, for being our guest. It was such a pleasure to have you.
Yes, it was.
Thank you for having me. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.